Welcome back to Truly Heal and video 2 of our free training for health professionals, functional medicine training for health professionals, how to treat cancer patients instead of treating cancer. Now in our last video we looked at how to hook a client to you and give them very, very fast and very immediate results so that they stay with you. And that was one of my biggest discoveries, like when you have someone that finds such fast relief from your recommendations, they're always happy to come back. Now in this video we look at analysis, diagnosis, finding what really is wrong with each individual patient, not on general and not based on cancer, like breast cancer, colon cancer, and then we target that. We actually look at the patient. And very few doctors, practitioners, naturopaths actually look at why the patient has cancer or is so sick, because it's usually not just one thing, it's many. And once you start looking into that kind of diagnosis, it really transforms your whole practice. It's much more important to know what sort of a person has a disease than to know what sort of a disease a person has. And I found that so true, because once you realize the consciousness and the awareness and the willingness of a patient to participate and to, engage in their healing, the faster you get results. And coming to what we use as a questionnaire, I would like to give you a little bit of an overview. We don't go through the whole thing, it's way too much. But I would like to give you a little bit of an understanding why we use that, because there is so much information in one answer that can completely change and transform our working with that client. How healthy was your mother and father? What kind of birth did you have? Oh, my mom died of cancer, my father died of cancer, they worked on a farm, they were very poisonous, my father had skin rashes and eczema and this and that. You realize that, oh my God, there's already a toxic inheritance, a load, probably destroyed DNA. Did you have a normal birth or cesarean? Very simple. As a cesarean sterile environment, you lack all the microbiota from birth, which you get from the birth channel from your mother. So the biome was never proper established. And then, where you breastfed or with the formula, when you have no breastfed, you don't get that initial bacteria load from the mother, again, to establish a healthy biome and a healthy gut biome. So just from a few questions, you will find out a lot of things. Has your mother had mercury fillings? Have you had many antibiotic treatments? Had you had a healthy childhood? Or did you have a bright and clever understanding at school? All of those things give you a lot of answers when you know what to look out for. And those of you who have seen the 10 Americans, you know that it is kind of a inherited problem. We pass on more and more toxins to our children. So it's not only that we accumulate them as we grow up and add more and more, it's already we start with a heavy burden and with a quite destroyed DNA, because that's from birth. You get that from birth. And if you have nutrigenomic impairments and you can't detoxify, well then you accumulate toxins a lot faster than someone who is born with an intact and highly functional metamorphism. So it's really important to understand those things from a start. Now, did you grow up on a farm? Did you, I had one personal story. I had my mouth with mercury fillings and my dentist was pretty scrupulous, drilled them out, put a new one in, and it was really bad. So have you been poisoned by a dentist? I'm allowed to say that because my dentist had no clue. Well, he probably poisoned himself in the same way, just by working with those fumes, and not only me, but with a lot of other clients. But when they were drilled out, because we thought that really didn't look pretty, so my mum said he needs to have the white fillings so that it looks nice. Well, everything was drilled out unconsciously, just all the vapors set free. And within a matter of a week, I couldn't read anymore, I couldn't go to school, I couldn't concentrate longer than 2 or 3 minutes. And from a very bright, smart child, I turned into handicapped. I couldn't do anything anymore. So my parents had to take me out of school into a private school because you know what the neighbors would say. And if not for a very, very conscious teacher who said, well, what happened? Look at his grades first. Then he completely crashed. And now he can't concentrate. What happened? And he actually found out that it was my mercury poisoning. You know, that was many, many years ago. So I'm very grateful for my teacher then. But that's when we started detoxing and pulling those mercury poisons out. So if you have been poisoned by a dentist with mercury fillings and from then on your gut is destroyed, your brain is destroyed, or you already inherited, that's something you want to know in advance. If you still have those fillings and they leach out and you've developed a sensitivity. So there's many things you can find out from a simple questionnaire. And I always say, like, I'm not a dentist, so I shouldn't ask those questions. Well, I don't think that's true. Ever as a health coach or as an MD or as a chiropractor, if I work with the client, I can't just look at one piece of the puzzle and say, well, I've got the solution. It's always a whole. It's a whole patient. It's one person. So looking at all the contributing factors makes a huge difference in their life and in your success. And let's face it, you know, I had a friend of mine went to a naturopath, and this naturopath started to do acupuncture and release some nodules in the back, and all of a sudden it worked. And the patient had tremendous relief in a very, very short time. And then he started to add some dietary recommendations like dairy-free and little things which made a massive difference. Mind cleared up, concentration, energy. Well, that one practitioner was referred to 25 people. You know, all of a sudden the whole family goes to him. All of a sudden all the friends are referred to him because he has success. And I guess that's what we all wish as practitioners, to be referred to be relied to, because that's what fills up your practice, gives you good credibility and allows you to work efficiently with your clients. So have you ever restored your gut biome after you've been treated with antibiotics? What does that mean? No, probably not. And then just that answer alone gives you so many insights. And the type of disease you have is not as relevant as the cause that needs to be resolved. And this is another big factor that we had to learn. Some people, and I think it's constitution, it's like how you're born. What is your weakest link? It's also, if you have leaky gut, you can have leaky gut already in your small intestine. You can have it in your stomach lining with Helicobacter pylori. There can be many different kinds of infections that trigger different parts of colon, small intestine, stomach, esophagus, mouth. And wherever the main infection, the main problem is, you will have different problems, different end results, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, depression, but it's all related to the same. So dealing with those things and knowing what is related to what is what we actually teach at the academy. See, I always call it functional medicine. Well, it's truly heal functional medicine. We've been looking at all the different trainings and courses, and yes, you can do case study after case study after case study, and that's great. It gives you quite a nice experience, but understanding on where all those triggers come from, that's something we've developed over the past 10 years. It really brings it into going systematically through an evaluation process, which is what I try to explain to you today. I hope I'm making sense. But understanding why a patient is sick is such, or makes such a huge difference in their whole healing process. Now, no disease is bad luck. It always comes. There's always one or more causes. And that's one of the things that we need to change in our thinking. So let's just go and look at the different aspects of disease. We have clients that come with an extreme stress load. And if they have high stress, can't sleep at night, high cortisol levels, then their hormones are out of balance, then their digestive system doesn't work. You know, what is the original problem? Well, stress maybe. So if they can't digest their food properly, if they have diarrhea, if they have stress-related anxiety issues, then is it not important to look at what triggers the stress, what causes the stress, and just giving them some calming CBD or some marijuana, and then they walk around in kind of bliss, but the problem is not gone. So what we try to do is look at shock, trauma, grief, resentment, anger, frustration, all those ongoing, not once off, they are fine, we need them. You need to get angry to resolve a situation, but the ongoing, chronic, over time, over a long period of time, immune suppressing factors. And once we see them and we analyze them, oh, that person is stressed. Well, in which area of life? Financially, health related, socially, do they have religious and spiritual stress? Do they have financial stress, social stress? Do they have work-related stress, being bullied in the family? What is the original problem that they can't handle? How can I help that person to overcome? That's what we look in our mental department. And then we look in our analysis also at their life purpose. Do they have a will to live? If a client comes to me, and you hear those arguments, preservatives, I need many of them because they make me last longer. You already realize they don't want to get well. They already find excuses for their unhealthy lifestyle. And those things need to be discovered, because if a person, and let's face it, has no money, no good relationship, is stressed at work or doesn't like the work they do, has no big social factors and is not well, that's a lot of reasons to actually be sick, to have an excuse to not participate in life. So again, that's things we need to look at and to see how we can help that person to enjoy life. What makes their life special? And then we look at the physical side. And again, physical side is very, very logical if you don't look at the disease, if you look at the root problems. You remember from our chart that we had before, there is actually not that many areas. We look at toxicity, very important. Toxins are the main reasons for cancer. They are called carcinogens in many forms, or neurotoxins, which then trigger inflammation, which then causes cancer in the second stage. So all of those diseases are all of those chapters are very logical. Infections, there's many infections who have a direct link to certain types of cancer. So if I know you have that type of cancer, then we need to look at these types of infections. Are they actually present in you? Then we need to look at deficiencies, very important. If your body doesn't have the nutrients to defend you against the stress in this world and all the toxins and infections and all of that, well, then disease will grow and build up. Then we look at organ health to really drain, not systemic health, your hepatic system, renal system, your different types of body systems, and see how well they work. If they don't, well, then you might build up toxins from your kidneys and you can't detoxify. You build up toxins from your liver and can't break them down. All of those things play a massive role. So that's one of the points that we look at, plus situations like stress and purpose. Now, vitality, lifestyle habits, everything to do with drinking, eating, sleeping, exercise. That's what normally health coaches do. See, they look at your lifestyle. But let's face it, if you have an advanced disease, you have cancer, you have Lyme disease, you have chronic fatigue, and I hear that so often, Marcus, I'm already now since 2 months on an organic diet and I still have my disease. Organic is to stay healthy, not to fill more toxins into the body, is what you do to stay healthy, but not to reverse a severe disease. That's where we need to go back into the blue area and actually start to detoxify properly, know how to detoxify for petrochemicals, know how to detoxify chemicals, medication abuse, or even heavy metals. So these are situations where just a healthy diet and positive thinking won't really help. And that's why it's an important part to maintain health and to establish good health, and a diet, that gives you strength and supports, but it's not just enough to get the whole healing going. And that's why we cover all of those areas, all of those 4, and build them into one program that you then see here with all those different chapters, analyzing, finding the cause of disease, what prevents recovery. And that's another big thing. You know, I say that quite normal because for me it's normal, but a lot of people don't think that way. Normal is like finding the cause of disease, what causes it. But then we have as a secondary factor, what prevents your recovery. If you have a deficiency for your body to rebuild healthy tissue, you have a deficiency in oxygen to do all the work, you don't have enough sleep, you don't have enough minerals or enough phytonutrients to actually deal with the repair and the DNA repair, well then nothing can work. So preventing recovery is just as important as finding the trigger to the disease. And that's what I call truly heal functional medicine. You know, like it's a very different approach. Now we've put together a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is not something you just ask a few questions. It's actually always related to what you want to find out. So if I want to find out about your biome right from start, how it developed, how you got it, and how it was destroyed, then I have a sequence of questions that will give me a massive overview about your gut biome. Then we have developed questions that lead us exactly to understand how well you digest food. And that includes a little bit of a dietary program to find out how well you can deal with certain foods. So all of that normally takes a long time. If you work with individual practitioners like we did, a hormone doctor, and they have a questionnaire, wow, but it's only hormones. And then you have someone who is very specialized for gastrointestinal, wow, they have great information. And then you look at someone who is very specialized in toxins, and then you realize how they approach, and that's what we've put together. It's been a long journey. And as you work through the coaching program or the training program, functional medicine training, you realize that as you learn to read those answers from those questions, you already get an image and a picture of the patient, why they have the disease, where it comes from, and it makes a huge difference. If you take the time to work with your client through a well-designed questionnaire, you will find that disease is never an accident. You will also see that without no doubt how you can help your clients in very profound ways. I've been at a workshop where a doctor who specializes in autistic children and ADHD and all the childhood problems that we have today, and he gave a presentation covering all the aspects that we do here, like really going through details, which I also will cover in the next 2 or 3 videos. And in the room, everybody was like, wow. And they stood up and said, well, how can we book? I tried to call your clinic, but you don't take any patients. And he said, well, we're booked out for 2 years. See, I teach you all those things because I feel pity with you, but I can't take on more clients. We're solid booked out, and we have a waiting list of over 600 patients. So it actually shows that when you offer proper guidance and not like, you know, just a remedy to suppress the symptoms like normal doctors do, or like most naturopaths just supplement the medicine with natural remedies, but still focusing on, you know, suppressing whatever is wrong. That's not medicine. If you do it like this doctor does, looking at the root problems, changing lives, and really influencing the long-term outcome, you are booked solid. And reversing damage at a root level can cause an immediate and fast recovery, and most of all, lasting recovery, because the patient becomes aware of it. Well, indications lead the way. You know what I mean. In our analysis of a client, we focus on putting things together. And here we see tonsillitis, sinus infections, ear infections, urinary infections, repeated antibiotics. Well, already indicate the patient has a weakened immune system. Definitely has leaky gut. From the inflammation has leaky gut. And also, if we then add some information from the birth, you know, cesarean, not getting the right gut biome, not being breastfed, but having contaminated formula, it doesn't matter. There is a few things that add up, which means that's a priority. We need to focus on re-establishing a healthy gut biome. And there's many different treatments to do that. There's many different ways to support that in a massive way. So that's priority. And that is something which I can only find out when I look at those different systems. Now we break down into the digestive system, endocrine system, renal, adrenals, hepatic, liver, lymphatic system, just to see which one needs greatest support. Where are the problems? Because let's face it, we're all born with a certain body weakness. One child is born and has right from start jaundice and detox problems. One child or young adult, when they go drinking, they are fit an hour later or 2 hours later. Another one has 3 days problems to discharge the toxins from the liver. So you already realize that in many different ways, and that is what we analyze in our chart. And then if that's one of the problems that we need to deal with, well, let's go for it. It makes a whole lot of sense. Now, you realize I've chosen liver to make my point, but if you have a liver weakness and you don't really know what's wrong with my liver, you might just poison yourself by going into a serious detox program. See, I've had Lyme patients that went to certain clinics which use really intense bacteria killing or pathogen killing herbs and remedies. Patient is in bed, has brain fog, can't even stand up, and their liver can't detoxify the neurotoxins, which now completely poisons the whole body because there is no pathway done. And that is, it doesn't matter what kind of problems you have, whether it's the hormone change, your liver transforms inactive hormones into active hormones, so your whole hormonal system gets out of balance if the liver doesn't work. If you don't break down or you use enough bile salts, you can't break down fats. Your brain doesn't work. Your brain is pure cholesterol. So you can't repair the brain. You can't have the nutrients for the brain, which makes you brain fog, dull, tired, can't concentrate just because the liver doesn't work properly. Then you have exhaust, fumes, pains. You react allergic to them. Well, it's the liver. So knowing what kind of symptoms my liver indicates and going through, do you suffer from? Yes. Oh my God, we need to support the liver. And that just gives you a huge advantage. You don't need to do a liver test. But let's face it, you have a client that comes to you and says, oh, my oncologist has said I need to go onto chemo. I really need to. And it's so relevant that I do that. And then you look at their detox profile. And let me just go one step further before we go back to treatments. I'll just try to jump there. Does it work? Let me just go and see, that was one too many. Okay. This was Wayne, a friend of mine. He was told that he should do low-dose chemotherapy. He went to a Mexican clinic and he started out, and his detox profile couldn't break down toxins in phase 1 and couldn't detoxify in phase 2. Now, from that oral chemotherapy that they gave him in the Mexican clinic, from day 1 he got worse, and he couldn't get rid of those toxins out of his system. So instead of helping him to improve, he deteriorated, and after 8 years of fighting and battling and really being successful in keeping his cancer at check, after that clinic stay, he didn't make it. So knowing that before you vaccinate your children, knowing that before you recommend a client, chemotherapy will be good, it helps a lot of people. Well, it can, but it doesn't help everybody. This is what your chart shows. And let me just go back to tests. This is what we actually look at in your liver function test, or what we look at when we look at gene testing, and we look at phase 1 and phase 2. You remember here CYP1B1 and A1, all of those GSTM1, they are all different liver detox pathways. Some are responsible to break down chemicals, others petrochemicals, others are important for pesticides and fungicides and herbicides, others from neurotoxins that your bacteria produce in the body. So knowing which ones work in your case and where you need to be careful would help dramatically if you know before you poison yourself. But if you already have, we know how to help your body and get rid of those toxins in a massive way. tests always also show you where I'm at. You know, like if I have my profile and detox profile from my liver, and then I do 4 weeks down the track or 4 months down the track, my next test, and none of the values have improved, well, then I know my treatments don't work. So I quite like that, because I'm not dealing with the disease, I'm dealing with that which triggers and causes my disease. And if I know that toxins are a big part of it, I want to know whether my detox program works. This is how I found out that when you do just detox, but you don't push it out of the cell with PMF, it's a long-term process. I had 6 or 7 mercury detox programs which did very little. The results before and after was just marginal. We started to add PMF and the results went straight away back into the green, for yellow first and then into the green. So those things really help. And it also helps with the treatment phase. If I know what's wrong with my liver, I can push and activate or deactivate phase 1. You know, like if somebody has an underactive phase 1, which means toxins are not even converted into a detox process, then we need to activate that. If it's too excited and your liver detox phase 2, which is the elimination process, doesn't work, well, then you make everything a lot more toxic and then recycle into every cell. That's when you get really sick from your detox program. So how to slow that down, drinking some grapefruit juice in the morning to slow that down and activate and stimulate detox 2. Wouldn't that make a lot more sense? See, I find it very disappointing when people who have studied medicine, who just give you general recommendations, because they might make you sick while they help someone else. And why not go into a little bit more detail, know what we do, and therefore support a patient in the right way. General detox recommendations that do not include such considerations quite often make things worse, and we can avoid that easily. I won't go into the app. I wanted to show you something in the app. I will do that in my next video and take it a little bit into more detail, because otherwise this one will be too long. But see, I always say this is my response ability. I'm able to respond with my app because it's a huge and vast field, and there is so much. When we wrote the program and we interviewed all the doctors, I was like, wow, and I knew it all. And then you don't use it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and it's gone. It's somehow still there, but it's not in the forefront. And I wouldn't use it as a normal thing. Now with the app, as you go through the questionnaire, all of those treatments, all of those tests, all of those symptoms, and all of the supplementation is right there. So I can't forget it. I can't ignore those things. I am reminded automatically to learn about the detox profile. And it will show me what I need to look out for. It will show me what kind of test. And that's why I believe this is the greatest gift of the whole program, in my opinion. Because, you know, some people might have a better memory than I have. But for me, that was like, finally, I am jogged. And once you've learned it, it easily is back there. But once you don't use it for half a year or 2 years, that's why most practitioners really shrink down to a program of 4 or 5 protocols, and that's it, because the rest is lost. Well, we don't do that. We've covered that one. Benefits of supporting the liver, you know, there is so many, I won't cover them, but that's just one system, the hepatic system, detox system. So of all the detox system, we need to look at which one is most compromised. So let's recap very short. Questionnaire, check the symptoms, build the symptoms into a storyline. That's this patient's story. That's how they came to be as toxic or as sick as they are now today. Totally makes sense and will give you a very clear picture on what needs to be done. Then you order those tests which might help you to improve your service. There is, again, a lot of practitioners say, well, where do I get the test? Can I read the test? Is that legal? I'm not supposed to do that. Look, the world has changed. I can order any test for myself as a private person. You as a coach or practitioner, and even massage practitioner, can order a test with a client, and then they get read by the laboratory. You not only order the test, but also the analysis. And then one of their super trained, super clever practitioners who really works with those tests all the time will give you a reading. You know, I had a non-GPL non-heavy metal toxicity test, and it's related to every single disease there is, including leaky gut, brain fog, fibromyalgia, 100 diseases, all triggered by non-heavy metal toxins. And then you have someone who can analyze, who can help you, make you understand, and then you can help your clients to work through. This is a fantastic time we live in. The whole analysis has moved away from that one person that should know it all into an open access system which we make use of. So testing, then from there you have a very clear priority plan. It actually doesn't need to be developed. You don't need to think about it. It's already there. And then you circle areas which you can address first and primarily, and probably with the easiest way of achieving results, and then educate and motivate and involve your clients. See, medicine today is not like go to the doctor and, yes it is, let me take that back. A lot of clients go to the doctor, have chemotherapy, don't want to change their life, don't want to change their diet. But that's not the clients you want to work with, right? So send them to the oncologist. You want to work with those who get involved, those who want to know, those who ask you 1,000 questions. Because you know, and then they feel safe, they feel certain, they feel confident that you can help them, guide them on their way, and engage them into their healing process. Once a patient is engaged, they know how to help themselves, you will find incredible results, a lot faster. Patients who just have someone do it to them usually don't have those results. And I say it's truly heal functional medicine. It's far more than just studying cases and finding out how certain things grow together. We've developed a program that analyzes right from start, and that's what you learn. As soon as you go through the program and learn it, you go through all of those individual chapters, and they're all correlated to questionnaire. So as you learn how to read the questionnaire, you learn what is related, what kind of test, what kind of symptom, what kind of treatment is related to that area. So by reading the answers on the questionnaire, you already know what to do. And with the app, you can build that into a very, very easy program. Effective, fast, with lasting results. And I like the last one, those lasting results compared to treating symptoms or proclaiming some kind of remedies that they bite you in your butt. They always do. And I speak out of experience, believe me. I've recommended so much stuff. And then people came back to me and said, Marcus, it doesn't work. And then you feel really bad. I spoke about the app, and this is included in the program. As soon as you join the program, you get the app. You get full access. You can use it during your whole training, and you can use it afterwards as a client management tool. It has a calendar function. It has a booking function. It has everything involved. You don't need to use that. You probably, as a professional, you already have your systems. You can only use it as a resource, but you can also take it as a note-taking tool, because every note, everything you want to remember about a client is there. You can even flag it and say, look, that's just in pathology. We've just sent off for the labs. So next time you open up the app and say, what's in pathology? Did we get the test results? It's there. All the areas that are flagged with alarm. Oh, high potent problem areas, I flagged with alarm. So I check one by one and see how we resolve them. So very practical. Again, it's not built by a medical professional, it's built by an architect. That's what my trade profession is. And when you look at building solid foundations and a solid structure, that's what my principles have been. And that's why we put it together. You also work with a proper practitioner. See, you can go through a standard training, which is, oh, you passed with 70%, the 30% that you didn't understand. Well, we don't mind, we still let you pass. Poor clients, but that's your problem. You work with a practitioner through all the exams. They hand correct, send your answers back, link you to certain things. If we have the feeling you haven't gotten it, or you haven't understood it, or you just copied something blindly, we'll let you know. And then you're taken through the whole program in a very simple way. And that one-on-one, this personal interaction, clarifying questions that you might have, will make a huge difference. It's a 1-year training, or up to 2 years if you want to. We prefer students that go through, with a bit of diligence. You can do it in half a year, that was the record. But you need a bit of prior education and knowledge for that. But if you go through in 1 year, it's solid, it's understood, it's easy, and it doesn't take up a lot of your time. And once you're done, you can use the app during the training, before the training, and you will be listed in our practitioner, in our referral program. And one thing I would like to mention here, because it's just important to me, this is not a one-man band. This is not a one-man show. I've learned everything we know from stunning practitioners, from doctors who were gracious enough to share their knowledge, share their experience. 30 years of experience, this works, this doesn't, this needs to be combined. That's high value. So if you work with us and we work in a team and we implement all our experiences together, this can grow into an incredible resource which we can add to the app, which we update in the program, so that we all have access to the best and newest and latest cutting edge knowledge. That was like double, triple. Now, if you would like to say hello, just simply do so underneath the video. Simply say hi. I'm happy about that. You can do that on YouTube or on this video here. Or if you are interested to join our professional team and learn about the health coaching program or the certification program for health professionals, simply fill out the form. There is a link underneath and I will get back to you. All right? Now let's just very shortly look into the program for next video, which I believe puts it all back into perspective. We talked about in the first video about diet and healing leaky gut as the fastest transformation and change. And you realize a lot of people know that diet is #1 treatment protocol. So we will look into the gastrointestinal tract. We look at how diet actually influences a patient. But we don't do that with that fanatic viewpoint, vegan, vegetarian is the best, ketogenic is the best. No, we need to be on a paleo diet. These are all opinions based on maybe personal observation. For me, that worked, so cool. I recommend that now to everybody. That's not what we want to do. We want to look at what is the gut biome, what is the digestive process, what is your liver breakdown, how can you digest fats, how can you metabolize proteins, what is your nutrient uptake, what is your gut lining. We look at all those things that really make a diet the ideal one for the patient. And what is their nutritional status, what is their inflammatory status, what is their leaky gut status. And once we take all of that into consideration, we can recommend a diet that will help a client to recover in the fastest and most effective way. And that's what we will talk about in the next video. All right? See you then.